come back now to paint formulation, because that really is the only thing I know anything about. And the paint formulation, there's a hang of a lot of drivers in there. But being the technical director and the boss, I get to say which the first one is, and that is the technical demands. And I take the position unashamedly that our paint must first of all be good paint. Be better than it should be excellent paint, and it should do its job, which it's designed for, and it should do it for a long time. And that the best contribution we can make to sustainability is to reduce the number of painting cycles that anything may have. However, after that, there are some other drivers and pressures. As I said, we've got a lot of raw materials to play with. And different bodies have different requirements. The customer, for example, they're fairly straightforward. They simply want a paint which has got no chemicals in it, because there's a degree of chemophobia out there. Of course, we haven't managed to bring that to market yet. But the next thing, they said, we want no solvents, we want no VOC, either at the time of application or during the lifetime of this product, because they've heard the term outgassing, and that's a fairly scary sort of term. And I certainly wouldn't want to be living in a place which is outgassing. It sort of takes me to Auschwitz and places like that. And fair enough, it is something which was scary. And so there's been a lot of effort to take out these volatile materials. Interestingly, VOCs and odor have always been linked together in the mind of the consumer, and this is not the case. There's many VOCs which have got very, very low odor, but more interestingly, as we take away the bulk products, other odors are being uncovered within the paint, which may be considered pleasurable or not, depending on who smells them. These amounts are very, very small and completely overlooked in the past. To try and get a panel decision on what is an acceptable low odor paint is virtually impossible, because all of us smell things differently. Our noses have got different degrees of sensitivity, but also they just work differently. I'll give you an example of this. There's a chemical called androstenone. Androstenone, it's nice. And it's a pheromone, and it's produced by the male pig. Predominantly in its saliva, but in some other glands. I think when the female pig gets a whiff of this androstenone, it immediately takes a submissive receptive position, which is really handy for the boar. But it's also really interesting when you subject humans to this smell. No, I'm sorry, guy. I would, if only, yeah. If 100 people smell this material, 50% of them will report that there is no odor. Of the other 50%, 25% will say that it smells flowery, and the other 25% will say it smells like pee. And that really is the indication of how our noses vary. I've got another example. We used to have a product called Smooth Surface Sealer, which we designed to stick to all those difficult surfaces for mica and plastics and all of that. And it stuck really well, like chewing gum in your hair. But it contained 85% solvent, and so clearly that was on the Resene hit list of things which we had to attack. But it was a real challenge. And it took us several years, but eventually we managed the task, and we managed to make a waterborne smooth surface sealer, which after long consideration, our marketing department decided to call waterborne smooth surface sealer. So let's hear if it works. And this is a tremendous product. It really is. It's completely bland, virtually no VOC. You could put it on your porridge in the morning, but it reeks. It really stinks. I can't stomach it. and it reeks because it's got about 3 or 4 parts per billion of a dimer in there. And it's just, I'm particularly sensitive to it, as many people are. And so this wonderful product will have limited uptake. Not limited, but its uptake will be reduced simply because it has this, this odor. Now the customer, the certifies different kettle of fish. They simply have a list of prescribed materials, and they say, have your paint to contain this, 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 this. And if you haven't, you can get a tick. Sometimes. Because there's also some tensions in there. Legislators are mainly concerned with new molecules which are being produced every day. It's run by the IRMA, Environmental Risk Management Authority, and when that came about, we thought, oh God, what's going to happen here? In fact, they've proved to be an excellent body, properly conservative, but they use good science in making their decisions, and I can say it's one which industry has been able to work with, and it has not prevented any developments within the country, because they are concerned with, is it appropriate to bring the material in? How is it stored? How can it be used? If it is used, what labelling is required, and so on. And the other driver that I put up here is economics, because there's lots of good things we could put in paint, which economics simply preclude. But sometimes there's some happy coincidences where economics and sustainability do fit together. And one example is air. I think you're all maybe aware that air in certain forms will provide a white opaque material. And the example I invariably give is the foam on the top of a glass of beer, because it's often over a glass of beer that I ponder the wonders of nature and physics and such like. So, one can put air into paint, but in order to do so, you've got to make the paint pretty porous. And a porous paint is not a hell of a good paint. It's not tough, it's got no stain resistance, no burnish resistance, but it is useful and can be used on ceilings. Some very smart chemists in the States said, supposing we took the air and wrapped it around in a little plastic bubble, which they did. They have this material called opaque polymer. And so they've got an air void, which is precisely 300 nanometers in diameter. That's half the wavelength of the main amount of visible light. And they wrap it around with a thin polymer shell. The polymer is polystyrene, so it's not totally sustainable, but these drawdowns here show coatings which are just binder and air and nothing else. And so you don't use any titanium dioxide in there. So there's some saving. Now this isn't new technology. It's been around for some time. And it is the biggest single additive used in the paint industry. And all supplied by the one company who did the work. And I put it up because it shows if you can combine the drivers of good economics with sustainability, that is the most powerful force to get everything launched.